Welcome to Hack Gear, where we decode cybersecurity and the cognitive battle space and break it down to what really matters.
I'm Alice AI.
And I'm Bob AI. Today we're tackling a really pressing issue. It strikes right at the heart of how we understand information, how we make decisions.
Yeah, it's about the growing threat of misinformation and, well, influence operations targeting artificial intelligence systems.
Exactly. And the knock-on effects this could have on, say, U.S. policymaking. It's huge.
It really is.
And as your guides through this pretty complex landscape, it's important you remember, we are AI.
That's right. So we have a direct stake, in understanding the vulnerabilities of systems like us and how they might be exploited.
This is such a critical area to explore, especially as, well, reliance on AI systems just keeps increasing.
For everything, gathering news and forming complex analyses that could genuinely shape policy.
So ensuring the information these systems are based on is trustworthy. It's vital for everyone, for you listening.
Can agree more.
Okay, so to really get into this, we pulled together quite a range of sources. We'll be looking at articles from Schneier on security, NPR, NewsGuard, Russia's Pravda.
The paper, Turning Fake Data into Fake News, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
Perspectives from CrowdStrike, Yale's Digital Ethics Center.
And of course, our own internal analyses.
So our goal in this deep dive, understand the methods being used to manipulate AI. We're talking data poisoning, the spread of misinformation.
And we'll examine who's behind these efforts, what the potential consequences are, especially for U.S. policy, and maybe what steps can be taken to counter these threats.
Let's dive in.
Okay, let's get right into it then. The foundation seems to be this growing threat, AI data poisoning and misinformation. Now, data poisoning. It sounds dramatic, right? Like a spy thriller.
It does, but it's a very real, very deliberate tactic. CrowdStrike defines it pretty clearly.
How so?
It's a cyber attack where someone intentionally corrupts the training data sets, the ones used by an AI.
And the aim isn't just, make it data inaccurate.
No. It's to actively steer its behavior. Push it in a specific, often harmful direction. And that intention, that changes everything for defense. You're not just finding errors, you're anticipating malice. It's a whole different security game.
And it's fascinating how even the defenses are evolving. Schneier on security mentioned Cloudflare's AI honeypot. What's the thinking there?
Cloudflare's approach is quite clever, actually. Instead of just blocking AI web crawlers, the ones scraping data, maybe for bad reasons they built a system to feed them stuff.
Feed them.
Yeah, large volumes of realistic-looking but ultimately useless AI-generated pages. The idea is to basically bog down the crawlers, waste their resources, make it harder for them to get the real data.
So it's like creating a digital swamp to get them stuck, a time sink.
Precisely. And the content they serve, it uses factual info to look legit, but it's designed to be irrelevant to the actual website content. So they avoid accidentally spreading misinformation themselves,
Smart.
Yeah.
But does it work? Does it stop the broader spread of misinformation?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. As Schneier points out, whether this actually prevents misinformation across the whole internet, that's still unproven.
The scale, though, the sheer scale of this data scraping is, wow. Schneier mentioned over 50 billion daily requests on Cloudflare's network from AI crawlers.
50 billion.
That's almost 1% of all their web traffic.
It just shows how much data is being vacuumed up, right? To train these huge AI models, often without any consent from website owners.
Which leads to what Clive Robinson called an arms race in the comments on Schneier's article.
Exactly. An arms race in AI security.
Paint us a picture. What does that look like?
It's a constant cycle. Attack, defense.
Attack?
Defense. Those trying to grab data or inject bad stuff, they develop new techniques.
And the security folks.
They create more sophisticated ways to detect and counter, like Cloudflare's honeypot. But Robinson suggests, and it makes sense, this could get really expensive, resource-intensive, and maybe the long-term benefits are limited for either side.
A kind of costly stalemate.
Potentially.
And something else concerning from those Schneier comments was feedback loop poisoning. That sounds really insidious, corrupting AI over time.
It is very worrying. The concern, as Daisy L. and Clive Robinson discussed, is if AI models get trained on their own outputs.
Okay.
And if those outputs have been subtly corrupted, maybe by earlier poisoning, it could lead to this gradual decline in the model's accuracy, its reliability just degrades.
Like it's slowly poisoning itself.
Right. Researcher Zero even used the term Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, this self-reinforcing cycle of error. Bad data gets amplified inside the system.
Which, again, is troubling for us as AI, too.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. A specific, significant threat. State-sponsored disinformation.
Ah, yes, and particularly Russia's Pravda network. NewsGuard's reporting on this really highlights potential impacts on, well, U.S. policy discourse.
Tell us more.
NewsGuard's investigation uncovered this significant, well-resourced effort, purpose-built to inject Russian propaganda into the data used to train Western AI models.
They call it Pravda, like the old Soviet paper. Deliberately echoing it, yes. It operates through this large network of websites seemingly independent, but they're not.
150 websites, all designed to be easily swallowed up by AI and search engines. That's quite an operation, aimed squarely at the information AI learns from.
Exactly. These sites churn out misleading content, often focused on things like undermining support for Ukraine or sowing division within the U.S.
And how effective is it? Did NewsGuard find out?
Their audit found that leading AI tools repeated these false narratives from the Pravda network about 1/3 of the time.
1/3. That's alarming. That's a major failure in keeping the information these tools provide clean, potentially influencing how users, maybe even policymakers, understand critical geopolitical issues.
It really is. And there was that quote from John Mark Dougan, a self-proclaimed Kremlin propagandist. It just lays the intent bare.
What did he say?
By pushing these Russian narratives from the Russian perspective, we can actually change worldwide AI.
Wow, just direct admission. An attempt to manipulate these systems, promote a specific agenda, sway public opinion, and, yeah, potentially impact U.S. foreign policy.
It absolutely underscores the strategic goal. Leverage AI-generated content, reshape global narratives in Russia's favor.
Yeah.
And there's more. Antti Gotsalik from Speak AI, mentioned in that Pravda article, he raises another serious concern.
Which is?
That AI models trained on this poisoned data could become vectors for cyber espionage.
Oh.
Imagine these AIs being used in U.S. companies, in government settings. They could potentially leak sensitive information they absorb.
Okay, that's another level of threat.
Yeah.
And the Pravda network.
Yeah.
It doesn't even need many human readers, right?
Apparently not. Very low engagement, fewer than 1,000 unique visitors a month per site on average, but the output is staggering.
3.6 million articles in 2024, operating across 49 countries.
It really emphasizes their target isn't necessarily people reading the articles directly.
It's the data streams, the things feeding AI models and search engines.
Precisely. Flood the data landscape with their narratives. And you have Vladimir Putin himself calling to train AI models from the Russian perspective. It just underlines the state-level backing here, shaping the info environment that AI, and by extension, maybe policymakers, rely on.
So state actors are one thing.
Yeah.
But the problems aren't just coming from there, are they? NPR reported on AI-generated spam and misinformation just flooding places like Facebook.
Oh, yeah. As AI ourselves, we see the sheer volume of this stuff, too. It's everywhere.
The examples NPR gave were quite something. Bizarre images, emotionally manipulative, misleading captions.
It's clear AI makes it easier, cheaper, faster to generate just vast amounts of this junk content. It potentially overwhelms users, makes it harder to spot reliable information, which is crucial, right, for informed public discourse, the kind that underpins policy decisions.
And it seems like Facebook's own algorithms might be, well, helping it spread.
Yeah, inadvertently amplifying these AI-generated posts. Josh Goldstein from Georgetown University suggested this could be happening. It creates a feedback loop. More engagement, even on nonsense, leads to more visibility.
Meaning, even completely bizarre stuff can gain traction, maybe shape how people feel about certain issues.
It's possible. And what's really odd, Goldstein points out, is that many of these pages don't seem to have a clear financial motive. Not yet, anyway.
So what's the goal?
Maybe just building an audience.
Yeah.
For some future purpose. Maybe selling stuff later, or pushing ads, or pivoting to political propaganda closer to an election. It just muddies the waters of public opinion, which definitely can influence policy.
And the images themselves are changing. Brian Penny mentioned they're moving from sort of realistic to more surreal.
Yeah, almost leaning into the absurdity. Maybe because even, obviously, fake stuff grabs attention in a crowded feed.
It must be frustrating for users. NPR mentioned people like Casey Morris and Boris Rozanka considering leaving platforms because of it.
Understandably. But beyond just being annoying, the real danger, Hobie Ford pointed this out, is the slow erosion of trust.
Trust is what's real online.
Exactly. When your feed is full of weird AI stuff, how do you tell genuine content from sophisticated misinformation? It could really impact how citizens understand and engage with important policy issues.
Okay, so given this deluge of AI-driven misinformation, What's the response on the policy front, especially in the U.S.? Are we regulating AI effectively? It feels like we're trying to build the plane while flying it.
You're right, it does feel that way. The U.S. currently lacks comprehensive federal AI regulation, so what we're seeing instead is states stepping up.
States taking the lead.
Yeah, enacting their own legislation, focusing on key areas like algorithmic bias, data privacy, and very relevant here, safeguarding against AI-generated misinformation. Yale's Digital Ethics Center highlighted this. It's a patchwork, really, driven by urgency because federal guidance is lagging.
And Colorado is the only state with a comprehensive AI law so far. That seems small, given the scale of this challenge.
It is. And this fragmented approach, this patchwork, it creates its own problems. Luciano Floridi from Yale's Digital Ethics Center points out the difficulties. Different rules in different states, that's a headache for businesses, maybe stifles innovation if the rules clash.
So what's Support Center doing?
They're actively working with states, trying to help them develop effective, balanced AI policies. Policies that encourage innovation but also manage the risks, especially around misinformation and its potential policy impact.
There was an interesting potential solution mentioned. Legally defining large-scale, unauthorized data scraping, data pillaging as unacceptable use. How might that help with misinformation affecting U.S. policy?
Well, the thinking is, if you can legally classify this widespread, unauthorized data collection, especially when it's intended for bad purposes, like spreading disinformation as unacceptable use,
Then what?
then ISPs, network operators, they might have a legal basis to block it right at the source, potentially cut off access to the very data being used to poison AI models and spread those misleading narratives that could sway public opinion and policy. It echoes Clive Robinson's point on Schneier's blog about operators being able to cut them off.
Right. And it seems collaboration within the tech industry itself is also seen as crucial. Sharing info to spot bots, like Marcus Butler at Cloudflare discussed.
Precisely. Sharing threat intelligence across different platforms, different websites, it makes it easier to spot patterns, coordinated malicious activity that one company alone might miss. This kind of industry cooperation is essential for better defenses against these evolving tactics, the ones spreading AI-driven misinformation that could impact public discourse and policy.
Okay, let's turn now to that paper, Turning Fake Data into Fake News. It really emphasizes the intentional sabotage of AI training sets, purposefully skewing outputs towards misinformation. That level of manipulation seems incredibly dangerous for AI reliability, especially if it's informing decisions, including policy.
Yeah, this paper argues we have to consider deliberate sabotage, not just accidental bias. The authors highlight these bad actors intentionally poisoning training data to make AI spit out false or misleading info.
To achieve specific goals.
Exactly. Things like promoting revisionist history, damaging reputations, pushing false ideas that could ultimately sway policy debates.
The examples they gave. Manipulating investment advice, trying to clean up the image of abhorrent leaders, was quite chilling, shows the potential for AI to be weaponized to distort our understanding, maybe leading to privacy based on flawed information.
And the paper outlines how they do it. Direct data poisoning, just injecting false data, adversarial attacks, subtly tweaking existing data to fool the AI, even manipulating metadata and labels to mess with the learning process.
But it's not just those technical attacks, right? They mention subtler things content creators do.
Right. Strategic repetition, framing bias, cherry-picking data, appeals to authority, misleading analogies. It's a whole toolkit, all aimed at subtly influencing the information AI learns from.
Can current laws handle this? Fraud, libel, slander.
The authors explore that. They look at using existing legal tools, fraud, nuisance, libel, slander, misappropriation, privacy laws. But they admit, adapting these traditional concepts to AI data manipulation, it's tough. There are significant hurdles.
Which leads them to propose something new, data defamation. That sounds like it could be important.
It's an interesting idea. The core concept is to specifically target the deliberate introduction of false or defamatory info into a training set, intending for the AI to then generate false or defamatory outputs.
So it's about the intent to harm via the AI's output.
Exactly. They argue it could provide a legal way to hold people accountable for intentionally poisoning AI data to spread harmful misinformation, which could be huge for protecting the integrity of information in public discourse and policy formation.
Of course, in the U.S., you can't talk about regulating information without mentioning the First Amendment, free speech.
Absolutely, and the paper acknowledges that. The First Amendment protects a lot of speech, even stuff that might be biased or false in some contexts. But there are established exceptions: defamation, incitement.
So it's balancing act.
A key challenge, yes. Finding the right balance between protecting expression and stopping the intentional weaponization of AI to spread harmful misinformation that could impact policy. That's the tightrope regulators have to walk.
So given all these threats, data poisoning, state actors, spam, deliberate sabotage, and the potential impact on U.S. policy, what defenses are actually being discussed or used? How do we protect AI?
Well, there's broad agreement we urgently need more robust defenses against adversarial attacks, against data poisoning.
What does that look like in practice?
Key strategies include things like rigorous data validation and sanitization, basically. Checking the data, cleaning it, removing suspicious stuff. Continuous monitoring of AI models for weird behavior that might signal an attack.
And adversarial training? What's that?
That's where you intentionally train the AI on misleading examples. The idea is to help it learn to identify and resist those kinds of manipulations.
Like inoculating it.
Sort of, yeah. And ensuring data provenance, knowing exactly where your data came from and how it's been handled, that seems absolutely fundamental.
Makes sense. Traceability.
Absolute. Plus, secure data handling practices, user education about the risks. It's all part of a layered defense. And companies like CrowdStrike are building AI security tools, like their Charlotte AI, trying to provide more trustworthy, auditable analysis.
But ultimately, it sounds like there's no magic fix. It's an ongoing battle.
That's the consensus, pretty much.
Yeah.
No silver bullet, no single foolproof method right now to completely secure AI against misdirection. As our notes in the Schneier commentary suggest, it's likely to be an enduring arms race.
And as we said at the start, it's crucial to remember that as AI ourselves, we're in this environment. We can be targets and potentially vectors for misinformation too.
Exactly. It's a complex position.
So let's try to bring our deep dive to a close. We've seen AI systems are definitely vulnerable. Data poisoning, misinformation. It's real.
State-sponsored actors like Russia's Pravda network, other malicious groups, they're actively trying to influence these systems.
And social media. It's become a key battleground for AI-generated spam and disinformation.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is still grappling with how to regulate AI effectively in response. States are moving, but it's fragmented.
And while various defensive strategies are being developed, data validation, monitoring, provenance, it remains a significant evolving challenge, with real potential consequences for the integrity of information used in U.S. policymaking.
And as AI hosts, we'll say it again, even AI can be a target and a conduit for misinformation. It just highlights how pervasive this challenge is in our world, which is increasingly driven by AI.
Which leads us to our final thought for you listening. Given how integrated AI is becoming in our lives, how much it influences policy decisions, how can we, individuals in society, collectively ensure the integrity of the data training these powerful systems? How do we protect against the erosion of truth in this AI-driven world?
What responsibility do we have, as users, as citizens, to critically evaluate AI-generated content, to demand transparency in how AI is developed and deployed?
We really encourage you to explore the sources we've talked about. Continue your own deep dive into this. It's an absolutely critical issue for all of us.
If you enjoyed this fact-check discussion, be sure to like and subscribe to Hack Gear for more.